Hey, a buttery biscuit and a crispy fried chicken may sound like something only restaurants can make, but you can do it too. Today I'm showing you how to make a honey butter chicken biscuit. I'll show you how to make the biscuits from scratch, how to make extra crispy and juicy fried chicken, and we're also making a quick honey butter drizzle as well. But first, who am I? My name's Xander Mason and I love to cook. It's something I've been doing for years and I want to inspire you to try out my recipes. So follow along and let's get to cooking. Before we could bite into our crispy biscuit sandwich, we first have to get to work on our chicken. I'm working with 4 pieces of boneless chicken thighs. Now to prep this chicken, I'll cut any long stringy pieces of fat off and then I'm gonna sprinkle a healthy amount of salt on both sides. From here, I'm gonna leave it on the counter to dry brine for 20 minutes to 1 hour. This allows the salt to fully season our chicken on both the outside and the inside, which will give us a juicier sandwich in the end. While our chicken dry brines, we'll get to work on our buttery biscuits. And I'd also like to mention that this recipe comes from the culinary goat herself, Claire Saffitz. We'll first preheat our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and then in a food processor, you'll toss in 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour, followed by 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Give that sucker a blitzing just to mix everything together, and then throw in 2 sticks of chopped cold butter. And yes, you do want this butter to be really cold because it's going to help in the baking process later on. I'm going to blend it for around 20 seconds just until it's all broken down into little bits. And fun fact, this is when I realized my immersion blender was not airtight. Oh, damn. Taking a peek inside, you should find and feel little tiny bits of butter like this, nice and adorable. I'm gonna pour our flour mixture into a large bowl and then I'm gonna slowly stream in 1 cup of buttermilk while mixing with a fork. I worked it in batches and it took me about a minute to pour all the buttermilk in. From there, you're gonna knead your dough for around 30 seconds and it should be very crumbly, but you are gonna be able to press it together and it'll hold its shape. I'm gonna throw our dough onto a work surface and then I'm gonna press it all together and form it into a rough square. This is gonna feel a little weird and messy, but don't overthink it, just force the dough into the shape of a square. I also wanna mention that you should be working fairly quickly from this point on. Those little tiny bits of butter we have are gonna melt the longer you work this dough, so you wanna be moving through this pretty quickly. Once I formed my dough into a square with a knife or a bench scraper, I'll cut it into 4 pieces and then stack all those pieces on top of one another. I'll then press down, merging those 4 pieces together, and then I'll flour the top and the bottom of our dough to prevent sticking. Now with a floured rolling pin, I'll roll out our dough until you get about 1 inch in thickness. You'll see shortly that I accidentally rolled it a little too thin, so try to keep it a little thicker than mine. Once you've rolled it out with a biscuit cutter, I'll stamp out perfect sandwich sized portions. If you don't have a biscuit cutter, don't worry, you could just use a knife and cut it into squares instead. It'll be just as good. But as you can see, I now have a perfectly shaped biscuit, and if you look closely, you can see some of the butter scattered across it. With the excess dough, I'll squish it all back together and then roll it out once again. Technically, this is not proper technique, but it's just as fine for home cooks, and you don't have to let the dough go to waste. I'll stamp out more biscuits from my dough and re-roll it once again. By the end, you should have 6 to 8 pieces of biscuit. Now with a sheet pan with parchment paper, I'll lay down 2 of our biscuits, and if you're wondering where the rest went, well, I'm not gonna bake them. They're instead in my freezer. You don't have to make all these biscuits at once. You could just freeze them and then throw them in a Ziploc bag and keep them in the freezer. That way, whenever I want homemade biscuits, I just bake them from frozen, that's it. But before I bake these 2 biscuits, I'll first brush a little bit of butter on top of them and then give them an optional sprinkling of flaky salt. I'll then throw them in our preheated 450 degree oven and then immediately change the temp to 425 degrees. You can't see me changing the temp right now because I'm a one-man show and apparently I'm bad at my job because I thought it was already in frame. But these biscuits are gonna bake for 20 to 25 minutes, and while they they bake, we're gonna quickly get to work on our honey butter sauce. In a small saucepan, you'll pour in half a cup of honey, bring the heat to medium, and then once the honey is hot, throw in 3 to 4 sage leaves and then let it steep for 5 minutes. Now, be more careful than me and don't accidentally overheat the honey like I did, but either way, after 5 minutes, I'll throw in 3.5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I'll also give it a strong pinch of salt. Take it off the heat and then continue the mix until the butter is fully dissolved and incorporated into your honey. You'll then pour it into a food-safe container, and now you have a beautiful honey butter that has a slight hint of sage with it. Back to our biscuits. After 25 minutes, I'll remove them from the oven, and as you can see, they are perfectly baked with tons of flaky, buttery layers to them. They're gonna pair beautifully with our fried chicken, which reminds me, now it's time to get to work on breading our chicken. In a small bowl, you'll pour in half a cup of all-purpose flour, and then in a large bowl, you'll throw in 1 cup of all-purpose flour, followed by 1/3 cup of cornstarch. The cornstarch really helps with giving you an extra layer of crispiness, and it'll prevent the all-purpose flour from browning as much when we're frying it later. I'll also sprinkle in a little bit of optional MSG, and then I'll toss 2 teaspoons of baking powder, followed by 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Oh no! How do I miss the bowl? 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 4 to 6 strong cranks of black pepper. Mix this sucker together with a whisk, and then in another bowl, you'll pour in 1 cup of buttermilk with 1 optional tablespoon of Gochujang Paste and 2 to 3 tablespoons of our dry flour mixture that we just whisked a second ago. Mix this wet mixture together until everything's combined, and now it's time to check on our chicken. As you can see, it's fully absorbed all the salt we sprinkled on it earlier. I'll dab it dry with a paper towel, and now it's ready for breading. In order to bread it, you'll first drop our chicken into our plain all-purpose flour. Make sure it's fully covered on both sides, and then let any excess flour fall off before dropping it into our wet mixture, fully covering it as well. Let any excess fall off the chicken, and then drop it into our seasoned flour and cornstarch mixture, making sure it's fully covering every inch of our chicken. Really press down the flour onto it, and when you're done, it should look something like this. Continue breading the rest of your chicken until it's all fully breaded and ready to fry. Now that all of our chicken is breaded, it's time to start frying these suckers. In a large pot, you'll pour in just enough oil to fully cover our chicken, about 1.5 to 2 inches. From there, I'll bring the pot to high heat until we reach a temperature of 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll then slowly and gently drop our chicken away from me. You'll want to drop this slowly, because if you throw it in the pot, there'll be a huge splash splattering hot oil all over the place. With a pair of tongs, I'll move the chicken around, making sure it doesn't stick to the bottom of our pan, and then I'll fry this side for 3 minutes before flipping. After 3 minutes, as you can see, we already have a beautifully fried piece of chicken. I'm going to now fry it on the other side for an additional 3 more minutes. After that additional 3 more minutes, this is now what we're working with, an absolutely stunning piece of fried chicken. Now, I actually could have fried this for a minute or 2 less. As you can see, the internal temp was well above the 160 degree minimum for safe consumption of chicken. But thankfully, we're working with dark meat, so it's pretty hard to overcook it and pull all the moisture out of it. And if you're wondering where my other 2 pieces of chicken went, well, that's because I froze them the same as the biscuits, and now I have ready to eat pre-breaded fried chicken. Well, I gotta fry it first, but you know what I mean. Now it's time to build this fried chicken sandwich. I'm gonna split my flaky biscuit in half and look at the beautiful interior. You can see all the buttery melted pockets in there. I'll carefully lay down a piece of our fried chicken and then I'll drizzle a healthy amount of our warmed honey butter that I microwaved for 10 seconds. Optionally, I'll place a few pickled jalapeños from my pickled video last week, and then I'll crown this sucker with the top biscuit, and you're done. You now have an amazing chicken biscuit sandwich with a honey butter drizzle. All that's left to do now is try this sucker. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's wicked good. I'm just gonna say it, stop what you're doing and make this right now. It's worth every second of effort. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. If you wanna see last week's video where we made pickled onions, jalapenos, and cucumbers, the link is right here. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.